So, John, welcome, and I'm so happy that you accept this invitation for this an hour interview that we have today. For sure, we have a lot of things to discuss, but as normally I do in all the interviews, and normally I start for everybody with the same question. So, John Albert Carpente, why music therapy? Why did you choose to be a music therapy? So, for what reason you decide, okay, I will be a music therapist?
Well, prior to studying music therapy, I was a musician, as probably most of us are, right? And that was my primary focus, to be a performing musician. And then one day, I realized I'm not sure if I want to do this anymore, but where else can I share, music to benefit people? And it was through Nordoff and Robbins. I saw one of their videos, like a television video segment. It was on the news many years ago, and I saw that, and I looked and I said, I want to do that, And then I went to visit there just to observe. And the moment I, came through the elevators and I walked in, I can hear the music coming out of the rooms, right? And you see the kids in the waiting room, and then a session just ended. So the doors open and the children are walking out, and you hear this beautiful music coming out and how the kids are relating to the music. At the time, I didn't really know what I was seeing, but it was just something that resonated with me. And I said, I want to do that. That seems really great. And then I found one of my mentor teachers, Evelyn Selesky, who taught a program at Malloy College, and she introduced me to the field, and it started from there. Yeah.
So, do you remember what year was that?
Yeah, that was 1993, 1993, maybe 94, 93 or 94. Long time ago.
Yeah.
A different world back then, yeah. So that was, so Clive, Robbins, and Carol were still here, and so I got to meet them. And so that kind of was the start of it, and then I went to Malloy College and became even more interested, and then went to New York University, became Nordoff and Robbins certified. At Temple University, and now I teach at Malloy College and run a clinic and do a training. We do trainings there at Nordoff Robbins, so it's kind of come full circle,
Okay, amazing. And yes, and this is a point that for me it's so nice to ask you. So it seems that since you started as a music therapist student in music therapy, improvisation was the main method that you were involved with.
Yes, that's right. And I think it comes probably from just the way I was a musician before I found music therapy. And then it's kind of the thing that probably attracted me to Nordoff and Robbins. And since then, it's something that's the main method of music therapy that I've been, developing and teaching.
Interesting. And but just for curiosity, because as you said, you were a musician, so you had previous experience with music, but how was your life before music therapy using improvisation? Because this is something interesting, because normally when I ask my colleagues, normally they say, well, I had a lot of experience with jazz, I had a lot of experience with blues before to start relating improvisation with music therapy. So how was your experience with improvisation before?
Well, but when I was, a performing musician, rock and roll was my thing. I basically learned how to play the instrument in bars. Took some lessons and learned in bars. But I think it goes beyond music improvisation. It was like how the band survived, and the risks that you take as a struggling musician in New York City trying to get shows and get a record deal. And it put you in positions that I probably would not have done on my own. It's that being involved in that, so it was really outside of the music. And then when we would play, it was, we played songs that we had composed, but getting to those those composed songs came from improvisation, very much in the like in a clinical context, right? Where we may be improvising with a client and we find a theme and a melody that we like, and then we repeat it and we develop it, and then it becomes a clinical theme. And then we bring it back next week potentially, and it's really a pre-composed song now, but we're still able to move in and out of the different dimensions of music, much like you would do on stage when something goes wrong, or you break a string, or you forget a section, and you don't stop. You go with the flow of what's happening, or maybe you adjust something based on what happened on the stage, So I think it goes beyond music. It's really the different facets of me as a person, philosophically, how I see the world, etc. Yeah.
Yes, it's really interesting because I was checking on a publication about assessment in music therapy from the Journal of Music Therapy. I can't pronounce really well her name. I think it's Isenberg Zerd or something like that.
Yep.
That she says that in music therapy, we have four things. So we have our beliefs, so our musical skills, the population that we work with, and for sure the institution that we work. And sometimes we focus too much in the things regarding the institution, the clinical population, in the musical skills, and sometimes we really forget about our beliefs, our philosophy. As you were saying, it's so important that this will make a lot of difference in terms of how we understand what music therapy is. And actually, this is connected as well with another question that I have for you, because reviewing some of your materials and some of your publications, normally one typical keyword in all your publications is the word relation, or sometimes relationship or relational. And for sure, I know that because we had many talks together, that you found out that actually music therapy, we have the music and the relation in the same level. So can you please elaborate more this understanding that you have from your beliefs and your theoretical background? What is this relation between the music and the relation when you are working with a client?
Right. Yeah, I think that as a music therapist, I want to focus primarily on the music, right? And so the music that we're both making, or if it's a group context, what the group is making. And so how do I understand what's going on clinically? So I'm looking at everything in the context of music, but what specifically? So is it about like, the musical skill of the client? Is it about how their propensity for music? Those could all be that. But I'm more interested in how relational they can be. So, and within that, I think that's about how they express the way they relate to music outside themselves with their own music. It can also be a manifestation of their strengths and challenges, their biological strengths and challenges, or developmental or mental challenges. When say a client can shift the way they play to join how you play, or they initiate an idea with the intent to relate to you, as opposed to initiating an idea to keep you away. Now that's still relational, but maybe we want to work on how would they initiate an idea with the intent to bring someone in with them, because maybe in the world outside of music, that's how they are, right? So the goal, I always say to my clinical improv students at Malloy, the task of the music therapist in working this way is very simple. It's to make music with the clients. It seems simple. And so the depth or the sophistication of their ability to be in the relationship, how robust the music making is based on, the variance of elements, could be a predetermination of how they relate and communicate with me on a micro level, but also a macro level outside in the world. So, and then if you think about it, right, when someone's making music with you, if we just focused on the music, think of all the byproducts that are going on, the things that are happening because of the music, all of those conventional domain areas. So if I'm synchronizing to a tempo with you or singing with you, my cognition is being activated, my emotional centers are being activated, my communicative centers are being activated. All of these functional domain areas are happening in music. But I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about how can I deepen the relational qualities or the experience to provide this, to deepen the client's relational qualities in music making. Does that make sense?
Yes, sure, because normally the questions for the students, and not only for the students, but for some professionals as well, well, you can work with improvisation, but actually you don't have a clear focus or a clear goal when you are working with a client. And actually, this is the point, like you are explaining, that when you know exactly how you can develop this relation, looking through the different things in terms of how through the relation you can achieve things in the cognitive area, emotional, sensorial, it's completely different. And for sure, you can have a target, you can have something that you want to achieve, but the way is completely different. And actually, even that can be more subjective. You can go in a completely different perspective. That is so interesting.
Right.
And for sure, one of the basic questions, sorry that I'm doing a lot of questions that we are not developing so well all the time, but for sure this is only our first interviews together. But one of the things that I would like to discuss with you is when exactly in your life did you start work with children in the autism spectrum?
Yeah, when I was going through my training in college, I didn't want to work with kids. I wanted to work with adults. So my first real experience in working with kids with autism was when I was a student at New York University, and I was a trainee at the Northrop Robbins Center at NYU. It's the first time that I worked with kids on the spectrum. And I was there for 2 years. And that's where I developed this passion, for working with kids. Not just on the spectrum. That was primarily the population that I worked with, or the client group. But that's when it started. That's probably about 96, 97, So yeah, it's been a long time. So since then, when I left Northrop Robbins, I knew I wanted to create something similar to it. Not necessarily a Northrop Robbins clinic, but carry some of the values of Northrop Robbins and what I learned at Malloy and NYU, and start a clinic that would be based in developmental relationship-based ways of working. And so that's where it started for me in terms of working with kids or people with autism.
Interesting. So, and when you started working, so it seems that you started your training, and 2 or 3 years afterwards you started working with kids in the autism spectrum. So I think that there is something that for me it's important to know. So how was, if you can describe or if you can remember for sure, how was your first session with a client in the autism spectrum? Because some people, they have amazing experiences, and some people, they had not really amazing experiences, but for sure great experiences.
Well, I don't remember the first session, but I can say I remember the first couple of sessions. So you have to remember there were other variables, So I'm training at Northrop Robbins Center. I'm already nervous, and so then I come into this, and I just remember I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw the video. And so, because I was just so self-conscious of my music, of who I was, I really wasn't in the moment. And of course, this is all in hindsight or retrospectively speaking, right? But watching the video was hard. I'm like, oh my God, it didn't even seem like me in the room because I couldn't find my music. So if I couldn't find my music, how can I find music for the client? So it took a while because I was just learning improvisation, like how to apply it, how to create it, and what was it really, So that was challenging, So the first few months was very difficult. It wasn't till later on where I got to experience a connection, that was kind of like we call it here an aha moment, it kind of reaffirms what it is I'm doing. I was still on. I think it's always a parallel process when we work in this way, right? So the more we can be present and be okay with how we work and who we are, then we're more available to be there for the client and make connection. So it wasn't really, the client is his or her own agent. It's really me being able to provide the experience, which I was getting in my own way. So this parallel process of, growing and seeing, and then I can be more available to provide musical experiences in the moment. And I think that's where, I started to see a connection intrapersonally and interpersonally, right? So yeah, there's many variables, I think, with that.
Yes, because sometimes I see some students, they are really concerned about the first practice. So I'm doing right. Or sometimes the first sessions, we have people that they want to play a lot just to show for the client how good you can play and you can deliver something in a musical perspective for the client. And it's important to say for the students that this is normal. It's okay. So you need to start from the point. So I remember, I can't remember actually the movie, but I remember the sentence that, okay, I don't want to do the lesson, so I just want to skip for the part that I'm amazing. So, but this is impossible in our profession.
Right, that's right. But that also, that's a great point you bring up, because it differentiates between process-oriented, we work in a process, and outcome-oriented. Because the relationship-based work is process-oriented, and we know that we can't get to point A without going through those micro points of before what happened before point A, right? So yeah, that's a good point.
And today I think that I had supervision with some of the students, and actually they did amazing questions for me in terms of bringing discussions about improvisation. And actually they did a question that many people, maybe they have this question, but we don't have time enough to discuss. And for sure, I will do exactly the same question that they did. So I will not say my answer. So I just bring into you the question. They said, what is the difference of using improvisation in music therapy and improvisational music therapy? What is the difference? So one thing, using improvisation in music therapy, and the other thing, what we call as this big term, improvisational music therapy, because actually this is the main point for them. And actually I think we don't discuss too much in our professional field. I think it's amazing that we can do it.
I don't know, I guess it all depends on how people define certain things. It could be really semantic-y, so the way you say, when you say improvisational music therapy, might, and I don't know, I never really thought about it, but I mean, might imply that the way we be with clients is improvisational, not just the music, but from everything. I know when I'm with a client, it's not just the music, it's all the extra musical things too that I'm doing. My affect, the way my body is moving, how I'm sitting, my gestures, things that are not musical, but are coupled with the music, right? Or if I decide I want to use puppets in song, it's improvisational because I'm being reflexive in the moment, and everything is based on what's going on with the client, as opposed to maybe the other word might be specific just to music, or I only do it this way. But I would say, just in thinking about it now, that improvisation will be like a way of being, with clients, as opposed to like one time, yeah.
Yes, this is a really great point, because actually I explain it to them, showing that for sure improvisation is more about the method, and improvisation in music therapy, as you said, is more about the philosophy. That's how much you can bring in terms of understanding the process as something in the improvisational perspective. And for sure I was reflecting about that, and actually I remember something. We don't have actually too many articles or publications just creating this kind of a line explaining, okay, so we had Nordhoff Robbins music therapy, so we had the analytical, music therapy from UK. We have the interactive music therapy from Amelia Oldfield, but actually we don't have too many publications studying and looking across the new tendencies in improvisation and music therapy. So for instance, I'm just remembering that Ken Hagen, you, Monica, Garrett Seger, many people, Tali Gottfried, Grace Thompson, they actually are bringing new things from the improvisation perspective that actually we don't have too much time to discuss. And in this way, I would like to start with you the reflections about this new possibility that you are bringing for us, which is connect the improvisation and music therapy, especially with the characteristics from Nordhoff Robin, from Juliette Alvin and Kenneth Bruscher, with this model called DIR floor time. So I would like to discuss a little bit with you, how can we understand this new perspective that you are working a lot to develop?
Yeah, I think I think that, the times are changing, even though, I still carry around the values of Nordhoff and Robbins, there are other things that have impacted my practice as well. Science is changing. We know more about child development now. And so we understand how the brain works more than we did, say, 10, 15 years ago. And so with DIR floor time, it's obviously a developmental approach, and it's looking at how children develop and the milestones that they're trying to foster are believed to be foundational skills for being able to learn and relate and communicate. So although we work a lot with kids with autism, this is based on typical child development. And so what the floor time model is basically a comprehensive way of trying to understand where the child is developmentally and what's getting in his or her way to move up that developmental ladder. That would be the I, the individual differences. So individual differences is how we process the world, sensorily, sensory motor, expressive language, receptive language, all of these things. There's no word of music in there just yet, right? So, but it's believed that these biological challenges are the things interfering with the child's ability to move up the developmental ladder and thus be able to be more relational, more communicative. And so the relationship-based part is that it's believed that everything that we do when working with a child should be done within the context of a relationship. So it's not like we're isolating a skill, like today we're going to work on this or that. It's done holistically. Because if you learn a skill within a social context, it's more likely to generalize than if you learn something behaviorally in an isolated way, because you'd have to teach that behavior in every context, right? So where the music part comes in is that I've been working on developing musical developmental levels and correlating those with social emotional levels. And so trying to understand musical interactions in a developmental framework. And so the assessment tool that we use, the MCAP, is something that kind of dissects the musical interaction and gives the music therapist a better understanding of how the client is interpreting, perceiving, and making music with the therapist. So just like the DIR model, we want to understand where the child is developmentally, but we're doing it through a musical lens. We also want to understand their musical differences. What do the conditions have to be? The musical conditions have to be in order for that child or client to be engaged. So maybe the client can only be engaged and the music is fast and loud. Okay, that's great. But let's see if we can widen their range of musicking, so they can be more relational to a range of musical contexts. And so this is done, again, within a social context. The task of the therapist, the music therapist, is to provide these musical emotional experiences to help them move up the developmental ladder in music. So with the emergence of new research, especially in autism, that the trends are showing that more naturalistic developmental approaches are being implemented, but also how the brain is processing music. We know a lot more now neurologically of what's going on when someone makes music or just listens to music or even just thinks about music when it's not even being played, right? So as a music therapist, we have all this new information. And so taking things from Northrop Robbins, Ken Bruscia, Greenspan, Irving Yalom, and now funneling them through contemporary science and knowledge that we know. I've come up with working in this I guess this new model, which is really just borrowing things from all these different other folks and making them just, I guess, more contemporary to meet the new needs of clients. Yeah.
Yes, because when we understand that actually the world is different, we are living different moments, for sure the theory in music therapy, it needs to be updated with that. And for sure, probably it's something that I didn't tell you, but it's something that I'm working with some colleagues, that I'm developing a project of a book that we are planning to publish probably in the next 2 years, because it will be a project that we need time for that. So we would like to publish a book only for about models, approaches, and orientations in music therapy, just having space for all these new things that actually some people they know, some people they don't know, but it's important that we can have these discussions about it. And especially because what you are saying, now we have the possibility to scan the brain. We can see many things about the development. We can understand how the brain reacts with improvisation. So it means that we need to update our theories. For sure, we are not saying that we are not using anymore the previous theories, the previous approaches, but it's important that we can update for sure. And one of the points that I would like to ask you, because as a DAR floor time student in a process to be a floor time therapist, one of the main things for me that is important, and it's about challenging the client. So this is a point that I had the opportunity to be your co-therapist in a session in Brazil. And I think that this is a great point for me. How about the relevance of challenging the client? Because for sure, in all the improvisational approaches we have, okay, you need to try to have this moment to be there, to start to work with the self-regulation, to engage with the client, to start developing communication. But I think that for me, one of the unique things from the floor time is that you need to challenge, you need to create challenges in the interaction. So what can you explain for me about this possibility of challenging a client in the musical context?
Yeah, that's really, that's important, you know, because I think a lot of times when people first learn about floor time, they think it's only about following the child's lead, only follow the child's lead. And that's not true. Because if you only follow their lead, then they're never going to grow. And it has to be more reciprocal. So in floor time, it's about, you know, maybe doing some playful obstruction. Because what you're doing there is not only you're challenging the child, but you're also tapping into their spontaneity and thinking and problem solving through stuff. So in a musical context, that could be, you know, speeding up the tempo or slowing it down, or changing the meter, or you know, altering the elements of music to cause musical problems, you know. And what happens then? How does the client try to solve these problems? By, you know, joining to, so in other words, can they adapt their playing to what you're doing? And by doing this, we're tapping into a different domain, and the interaction becomes more sophisticated. Because let's face it, when you're working with clients and you repeat things, they have great memories, right? And so they can repeat what you're doing. And if you don't challenge, they can still play. You could leave the room, they're still doing the same thing. Oh yeah, it's relational, but it's not relational. It's just their memory. But if you don't, that's, you know, if you tap into that, which is great, but then we offer a change to get more circles and thinking going on at the same time. And the aesthetic, you know, becomes more robust. The music making becomes more robust. And so, and it gives us more insight into the client, because like, what are they going to do with this challenge? Are they going to assimilate it? Do they adapt it? Do they just adapt to the play, or do they adapt to the musical elements? And so if we don't do that, I think that's one of the misconceptions about what we do as floor timers and relationship-based therapists, is that, oh, you just copy the child, you just follow their lead. Not true. you know, we challenge them in order to help move them up the ladder, the developmental ladder.
Sure. And as Gabriela is in here, for sure sounds like Northrop Robbins. So for sure we use this challenging process in Northrop Robbins. But perhaps my point asking you was more about that this is a target concept in DAR floor time, because it's based on, especially in the relation. So it's not too connected in the music. And for sure, and this is interesting because even that you don't stress too much in your publications about the model of Juliette Alvin from UK. Sometimes I see this kind of having this space of you need to follow the child's lead and you need to follow what is going on. It's really connected with the ideas of Juliette Alvin. And I am so happy that you acknowledge that in your publications, just saying that actually there are more than one improvisational model that we can connect to create this different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, Northrop Robbins is in there, but Northrop Robbins would focus primarily in the music. So if Clive and Paul met Dr. Greenspan and they were working with a kid who was not engaging in music, Greenspan would say, well, this child has motor planning issues. He's not going to play. Northrop and Clive would say, no, the music isn't right. That's why he's not playing. But what we say is that we have to look at both. We have to understand the biological things that are going on, the affective things that are going on within and outside of the music making process. But even though we can qualify all that as music if we wanted to. So there is a little difference because one's looking at the interpersonal and then one's looking at just the musical, intermusical, right? And I think Alvin probably incorporates both of those in my understandings. So yeah.
Yes, I have sometimes the impression that I don't know why they don't cite too much what she's doing, because actually she did something really amazing in terms of publications and the different things. I think we use more in Europe, but not too much I see in Latin America, people teaching about what she published. Another point that even that we had other things to discuss, we have assessment, and we need to discuss about the INCAP as well. I think one of the things that I really need to talk with you today, because I think it was published maybe yesterday. I think so. I just need to check here the date. Let's see if I have the date here. No, probably don't have the date. So it was published probably yesterday. The new version of the evidence-based practice for children, youth, and young adults with autism.
Oh, yeah.
So I did a look in all the publications, and now we have music therapy, but with a different term, because they are not including only music therapy interventions. They are including other publications that they use music as the main intervention. I'm just trying to find out here what was the title that they use it in a way that we can discuss. Yes, they use the term music mediated intervention. So yep. I will try to be really neutral, and I will try to have with you a kind of understanding about the results that they were published. So in these results, so we have about nine different publications that they were part of this group of publications talking about music mediated interventions for autism, saying that yes, music can be a good intervention. So there is evidence that we can use music as an intervention for autism. But looking through the inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria, I didn't understand why the publications with improvisational music therapy interventions, they are not there. Only right. Publications focused in behaviors. Even that, and I think that this is a great point for us to discuss, even that your intervention is based on improvisational music therapy, you can work and you can develop outcomes, even that this is not your main focus. You can work in outcomes. And my question for you here is just to try to be clear for everybody. How can we work at the same time using improvisation and music therapy, being in the improvisational perspective, but at the same time to work with the outcomes, since in research we need to work with outcomes?
Right. It's challenging, because it's hard to protocolize improvisation. And we saw it, with Time A. It was a great study, and it was the largest RCT with autism. But we had music therapists improvising from all different parts of the world. So there were a lot of things. It's hard. How do you define it? How do you measure it? How is the fidelity there? It's challenging, because the nature of improvisation is the freedom to move in and out of different musical dimensions, right? So, but that being said, I think that our field has done a good job in creating like a systematic way. It's very similar to floor time and the other developmental approaches that report does identify as being evidence-based. They call it naturalistic developmental, by the way, which is really developmental. And if you look at those articles, it's very improvisationally based, the play. Like floor time is, they have it says the criteria or the protocol tells the therapist what to do, right? It doesn't say, it doesn't really say, well, for the music therapist, it would say how to play, but it doesn't say what to play, right? So you can say, okay, first follow the child's lead. Use imitation, synchronization, those Brucia empathy techniques. Do that. But it doesn't say play Dorian or play samba or play. That's up to the therapist. So I think the how to play, we've been doing that. We did it in the Time A study. I thought we did a nice job in protocolizing that. I think more and more folks are doing that. But I want to add to this report is that, as you mentioned, the inclusion criteria was very odd. And there are a few robust, good studies, RCTs, that involve improvisation that were not included that came out. Your study, Grace Thompson's study wasn't included, right? And that's also, even though it just came out a couple of days ago, that's old. That's old data that they're presenting. The other thing I want to mention, since you brought it up, is that look at the authors of that publication. Probably over 80% are all behavioral, and so it's political. It's political because we can find a lot of DIR studies, especially now in 2020, robust randomized controlled trial studies that show effectiveness. Music therapy, the same thing, but they didn't include it, and they kind of put us in this weird place. Now, it's great that music therapy is getting noticed as an evidence-based practice, but I wonder, in what context.
Yes, but I think that at the same time, it's a good opportunity to explain what music therapy is and what we can do in music therapy for our clients. I think in this perspective, it's something good. I think that the main point that actually more and more people, they need to discuss in the autism field is how you can classify the different kinds of study in music therapy. Because even that in improvisation and music therapy, you not have strict steps that you need to follow to have your outcomes. We can work in a systematic way because, and for sure, we have, for instance, one of the articles published by Gina Kim in 2009, it was only connected with behaviors, but was connected as well with improvisation and music therapy. Right. And I think that, especially in our field, I think it's important that we can put all people that they work with music therapy and autism together just to see and discuss the differences between the different approaches. But remembering that in the end, actually, everybody wants that the music therapy can be recognized, that the music therapy can be well, can be really spread in different places that people, they can more and more include in guidelines and things like that. But it's important for sure that we can not only listen, but we can respect and try to understand the different points of view. I think that this is something that maybe in the field of autism, we need more. We need more this union in terms of, okay, so we can work together, it's fine. So let's see, how can we do this together in terms of explaining for other professionals how we are doing. And for instance, in some areas like people working in hospitals, they are really connected in terms of explaining for other professions what we are doing. Maybe this could be something that we can bring in the future.
Yeah. I think, as I said, as science grows, our studies, you know, but right now we're working on a study to look at EEG outcomes in improvisational music therapy. That's new. And other colleagues that are doing that in a different context, you know. So I think we can. One of the challenges, you know, as you and I have always encountered, I think, is trying to find a music-based assessment of you know, is this robust enough, and is it measuring what it's supposed to measure, and you know, why are we going outside of our discipline? That's a big challenge right there, when we're using assessment tools outside of our discipline to justify what we do, you know. So I think that is a big challenge for us.
Yes, and well, taking the opportunity, because you are talking about music-based or music-centered assessment in music therapy, and actually I would like to discuss one theme that is related with two publications from you. So one is because this is your main thing that you are discussing, so the music-centered perspective. And you published together with Kenegan last year a chapter only about music-centered assessments, which is something that we need to understand what is going on in the music to try to see the outcomes, because probably in the other professions, they will not be able to see exactly and track in the same way. So this is one of the points that you discuss in this publication. But for sure, at the same time, you created an assessment tool, specially based in the music-centered interaction, to track different things in music therapy for the not music therapy context, which is so important, because we are not doing assessment tools only for us. We are doing assessment tools because we want to do something for the other professions. So saying that, I would like to ask you, so why did you create the INCAP? What is this tool? And why it's important to have a music-centered perspective?
Well, it started really when I was working in floor time in DIR with music therapy, you know, and trying to understand what are the markers that we need to look at as music therapists. You know, what are the musical markers, you know, to justify me actually being here in music with this person. If you look at, you know, in our field, in music therapy, there's very little at the time. I don't know if there were any that was specifically population-based assessments. Up until then, a lot of music therapists were borrowing from other disciplines or even other population groups and importing that, you know, into their work with autism. So I think that we're lacking in that in terms of a music therapy tool for autism, and B, a tool that just looks at music. So a lot of the assessments that are out there, the music therapist is measuring all the domains. So they're measuring cognition in some way. They're measuring social in some way. And the music is the last thing. And I never understood why music's even there. What's the point of it? You know, what's the point if you're looking at communication, social, et cetera, and then music? What's the role of music? You want to know what? So I wanted to create something that only looked at music, that music would be the domain area, right? Within the context of how the client relates within that musical experience. And so that was really the seed, you know, or the impetus to want to create this tool.
And can you explain for everybody what are the main characteristics of the INCAP?
Yeah, so the MCAP is made up of 3 scales, right? The first scale measures how the child is relating musically, emotionally, based on how they play music with the therapist. The other scale is musical cognition, to see how, we're trying to understand how they're perceiving we're perceiving the music that's being played. And it's broken down into different elements of music and different cognitive tasks. The third scale is looking at the overall responsiveness and the level of arousal of the child. You know, are they underreactive or overreactive to a certain group of musical elements, right? So the idea is to use scales 2 and 3, musical cognition and responsiveness scale, as a way to understand how really it informs how our music, it informs how we create and bring the music to the child, so we can help move them up scale 1, those different milestones or constructs in scale 1 that have to do with engagement and problem solving and being attentive in music. And the MCAP provides not only these scales, but it provides a systematic way of working in music. So it gives it explains to the therapist how you target a certain musical behavior, how do you craft the music. It doesn't say what to play, but the different clinical techniques, a la Brucia, that you would implement to try to target certain areas, so you can assess and get a better idea of how the child makes music with you.
Yes, it's interesting, especially when you are describing the third scale regarding the responsiveness from the child. And we are finishing now a thesis in Albert University that one student took the INCAP scale, so she did a kind of analysis, but actually she was doing a phenomenological study. And she only took one of the main outcomes, so she took self-regulation from the scale 3, just to observe in a more descriptive way what was happening during 2 sessions. And it was so amazing, because when you have constructs that they are really well prepared and they're really well engaged with other specific items or sub-constructs, it's easy even to adapt for a qualitative study. And for me, maybe considering the whole structure of the INCAP system of scales, I think that especially it was the only one, at least that I know, that is so precise to assess the self-regulation during the music interaction. And I think that even that we have 3 scales, you have specific sub-scales that they happen too much. The clinician, even to adapt in some ways the way that the clinician is assessing the client.
Yeah, it's pretty well put. Yeah.
Oh, unfortunately, we don't have too much time to complete our 1 hour. And for me now, it's important that you can have space to talk a little bit. First of all, how can people follow you in all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter?
Yeah, so Instagram, well, this is my Instagram page. I'm pretty new to Instagram. But you could also check out my websites. It's dmhmusictherapy.com. On there, there's a listing of the different trainings, the MCAP, the DIR floor time trainings, the DIR floor time music therapy based trainings. I can even type it in here, I guess. Let's see, DMH, right? Can you do that? Let's see.
Yes, and just both, and people will see.
Music therapy dot. I hope I spelled it right. Of course I didn't. And then my other page is therebeccacenter.org. Let's see, that's this here. Did I spell that correctly? And then there's...
Yes, I think so.
The Rebecca Center. And there you can see our new telehealth programs that we're doing, because we are adapting now to what's going on. And then on Facebook, You can find the Rebecca Center on Facebook. There's an MCAP Facebook page that's closed, but you're welcome to join. And there, you know, we have some discussions and give any kind of updates on MCAP. Right now, I'm trying to formulate. Generally, it's an in-person training, but because of what's going on, I'm working on maybe making it into a, you know, synchronous online type training. I'm not sure, but if any, you can find out information on that as well. Or any questions on today, feel free to reach out, you know. And thanks, Gustavo, for doing this. It's always fun talking with you. You know, it breaks up the day too.
Yeah. Yeah, and for sure this recording will be saved. So probably we for sure Joe and I will publish in different places, so in a way that more people they can have access to this interview. And just to say that this is just one interview, that probably we do other interviews focusing more in music therapy, just talking more about musical content for music therapists. And probably I will publish this in my page on Facebook, and I will publish as well in the YouTube channel that is called Improvisation in Music Therapy. That's something that I created especially for the students in music therapy from Aalborg University, but it's an open access YouTube channel. So if you have the opportunity as well, John, to recommend to your students, yeah. So it's a great place to find out some resources. And for sure, for me, it's amazing that even that we have many bad things at this moment happening, it's so great that we had this opportunity to talk together with more people and having the opportunity to explain and clarify many things about what you are doing in US and around the globe in your international collaborations.
Oh, great. Well, thanks. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Always is, you know, and I appreciate it. So I look forward to doing it again sometime. Yeah.
Sure, we will. And for sure, I need to say, and probably I will need to say this all the time, I need to say many thanks for Kristen Gold, because it was Kristen Gold that allowed us to know each other. So if you have an opportunity, Kristen Gold, to watch this video once, so we just want to say thank you too much for all the help that you, because even that some people, they think that, oh, Time A was not the best publication, but the important thing that Time A created an amazing research network around the globe of music therapists working with autism. I think it's important to say that.
Yeah, I made incredible friendships.
Sure, for sure, incredible friendships.
Yeah, that was great. I was on a personal note, but yeah.
Exactly. So, John, thanks a lot. I hope you can have a great day, and probably until the end of today or in the maximum tomorrow, I will target you and I will send you all the information in a way that you can post this interview in your social media as well.
Great. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Gustavo.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.